Hello, Talizaba. Agenda Meganu look over it. The Nigaro Jaro, the Paitari Angadushi Bari, Angandua Jaka, Jaro, the kind Roma goes the pain, the totem did a kind Roma, totem goes a pain, think Aquila Police, so they will go along, break the along of Paco Bari. So Gajango, Angle by Pro Quimbiba, Paitari Angadua Jaka, Angle Nangakata paid it. So, Taliza, welcome from Arakan Media. It is very important to preserving Arakan Roma. Forest is critical to combating climate change. Arakan Roma forest about 1,700 kilometers. It is magnificent places, but it is also home to all communities in Arakan. People of Arakan fully dependent on traditional and environmental integrity. So our people believe that they cannot have healthy community without a healthy environment. So we wanted to protect our landscape, forest, ocean. It is vibrancy of so that it's remain into the future generation. Arakan Roma Forest ecoregion ancient hardwood forest, which is home to many endangered species like we have elephant, we have many species and animals also critically endangered. Today's Arakan Roma forest is visual evidence that deforestation and natural disaster. Arakan Roma forest is under threat. So how do we prevent deforestation and at the same time promote sustainable development and human security? So how we get through this? So today we are very lucky and honored to have our special guest, our good friend, Mr. David Seaborg, who is the biologist, peace activist, author, and leader in the environmental movement, and the founder and president of the World Rainforest Fund. So Mr. David Seaborg, welcome from Arakan Media. Thank you for joining with us. Today, we are covering topic on global warming effects, solutions. How can forests be preserved? The expansion of agricultural land can be destructive to the forest. I hope this conversation will help us to public policy and enforcement, especially environmental justice. Thank you, Mr. David Seaborg, you are welcome, and this is your time, so we won't be interrupt your speech or your lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nwe, and thank you for having me on your public show. And I'd like to say Thalizwa, greetings to everyone. And as Nwe said, I'm an evolutionary biologist and president of the World Rainforest Fund, which is dedicated to to empowering indigenous people to save rainforest. And I'll return to that. But I am going to talk to you about climate change as well as forests. First, what the problem is, and then some of the solutions. And I will start with the fact that there's a relationship between climate change and deforestation. And it is as follows. When you cut the rainforest, the first problem is that the trees, when they're standing, then that's a good thing because the trees carry out photosynthesis and they take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And carbon dioxide is the main greenhouse gas that causes global warming, and they produce oxygen. So when a tree is standing, it helps solve the problem of climate change. However, if you burn a forest or clear cut the trees, then the tree becomes an enemy because the tree decomposes or is burned. Either way, the carbon in the tree is released as carbon dioxide, and it makes more carbon dioxide in the air and makes climate change worse. Now, in some of the countries, they actually flood the rainforest. They build large mega dams, and it floods the forest and destroys the rainforest, kills all the species there because they go underwater. In that case, when the trees decompose, there is a different microorganism that decomposes the tree. And instead of releasing carbon dioxide, the main greenhouse gas, then when the forest is flooded with a dam, the forest releases, when the trees decompose underwater, they release methane, which is the other main greenhouse gas. And methane is 30 times as powerful a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide. So when you build a dam and flood the forest, you make climate change even worse. Now, the other side of the coin is, how does climate change affect the forest, especially tropical forest? Well, when you change the climate, because the reason we're changing the climate is we're adding carbon dioxide and methane. Those are the two main greenhouse gases, but other greenhouse gases as well through to the air because of our industry, because we burn natural gas to warm our homes, and because of our transportation, cars and airplanes and buses and so on. So that way we're burning coal, we're burning oil, we're burning fossil fuels, and we're adding the two main greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide and methane, to the air. So it's the burning of fossil fuels that is one way we make the climate worse. But the other way, and the reason is because the greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, when the sun's heat comes in, it radiates away from the earth. But it can't radiate all of it back out of the earth. When the greenhouse gases like methane and carbon dioxide trap it, and they trap the heat and make the earth hotter. That's why we have climate change. It's caused by humans, not natural forces. So now, the other reason that we have climate change is because, as I explained, when you cut the trees or burn the trees, they no longer take the carbon dioxide out of the air, they add it to the air and make it worse. So a good portion, lots of climate change is from cutting trees. It's over 30% now. So we need to save the forest to save the climate, and we need to save the climate to save the forest. So there are other consequences of cutting the rainforest than the climate. For example, half our medicines are from plants. So much of the medicines that we get today come from the rainforest plants. For example, drugs that cure cancer, drugs that prevent and cure malaria, drugs that fight fungus, drugs for the heart, drugs for birth control pills. All of these come from the rainforest. And it's the indigenous medicine people, the shamans, who know as much botany as a PhD botanist. And they know all about the medicine. So if we destroy the forest, we don't have the medicine. And if we destroy the home of the indigenous people, then the shaman, if they die, they can't pass on their knowledge. We lose all the knowledge of the medicine as well as the plants that have the medicines. So a second reason to save the rainforest is the trees of the rainforest actually produce the rain locally. So it's not just global warming that we need the trees and the rainforest to help solve. We also, if we cut the trees, when they're not cut, they do something called evapotranspiration, which means they take the water from the ground through their roots, bring it up through the trunk of the tree into the leaves. They release the water into the sky, into the atmosphere, and create rain. So in the Amazon rainforest, the biggest rainforest in the world, half of the rain comes from the water from the trees from this process I just described called evapotranspiration, and the other half comes from the Atlantic Ocean because the sun evaporates the water. So the trees create the local rainfall, which the animals need, which the trees and other plants need, and which the local people need to grow their food. Another reason we need to save rainforest is many of the crops come from the rainforest. So we have plant crops, but they don't have enough variety in them. They don't have enough genetic variability. So if you never add new varieties to your, for example, to your rice, then fungus and insects and weather can destroy your crop. So you need to keep adding genetic variety to keep up with the fungus, the virus, the changes in the weather. So you need new varieties from the rainforest to keep your crop going. So that's very important, but also the rainforests are just a source of food. We get many food from the rainforest for bananas and coffee. Coffee's not a food, but it's a drink, but mangoes and cashew nuts and Brazil nuts and so on. So another reason to save the rainforest is it's the most biodiverse habitat or ecosystem in the world. That means there are more kinds or species of animals and plants in the rainforest than any ecosystem on land. Half of the species of animal and plant live in the rainforest. So if we destroy rainforest, which we're doing now, we are sending those species of animal and plant and fungus and so on extinct. So right now, the rainforest is being destroyed at the rate of 300 acres every minute worldwide, which is half of the size of the state of California every year, cut or burned. Annual destruction of rainforest. So that means many species of animal and plant are being lost, many medicines are being lost, and the local climate is being changed, so we're causing drought there, and also the global climate, the global warming climate change is being made worse. The other reason is to save the rainforest is it's very beautiful and it deserves to be protected just for itself. It's the ethical thing to do. And it has lots of information about medicine, botany, biology, evolution for science to learn that we need to learn to further the goals of society. And we don't want all of the beautiful animals to go extinct, the parrots, the monkeys, the elephants, and so on. So those are the main reasons to save the rainforest. Now, how is it bad when we change the climate? What is the problem? I said that we are adding the greenhouse gases, main ones, carbon dioxide and methane, but others too that keep the heat in. And the other reason is cutting the forest makes more carbon dioxide go in. But if the tree is standing, it takes the carbon dioxide out and makes the problem better. So we need to cut back on the burning of the fossil fuels and not cut the trees. So why is changing climate bad? What is happening when we cause the greenhouse gases to trap the sun's heat that's leaving the earth after it has come to the earth and it's leaving and it's trapped? The earth gets hotter. How much hotter? Well, they think by the end of the century, maybe 4 degrees centigrade for the global average temperature. 4 degrees doesn't sound like too much, but actually for global average temperature, That's lots of heat energy. So what happens, one thing that happens is the ice at the poles, the polar ice caps at the Arctic, up at Greenland and the North Pole, and in Antarctica at the South Pole melt. And when the ice melts, there is more water in the ocean, so the oceans get higher. That's sea level rise. But also, when you heat water, water takes up more volume. It takes up more space when it's hotter. So that's the other reason global warming causes the sea levels to rise. When the sea levels rise, we have many major cities going underwater, and we already see that is happening to Miami. Florida is going underwater slowly, but by the end of the century, all of Miami will be flooded. San Francisco will be flooded. Los Angeles will be flooded. London and lots of Great Britain will be flooded. Bangladesh will be flooded. Tokyo will be flooded. And parts of Myanmar on the coast, of course, will go underwater. So that's sea level rise. Right now, we're getting more surges of storms on the sea level. So it's already started. And also some island nations, for example, the Maldives, they're in the Indian Ocean, and also Vanuatu and Kiribati. These are islands in the Pacific Ocean. They're already going underwater and they're having to be abandoned. So this is very serious loss of space for people to live. But the other bigger problem, I think, in my opinion, is the melting of the glaciers and the mountains. So Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa is becoming completely brown and losing its ice. But the problem of melting the glaciers is when you have the glaciers on the mountains, at first you get flooding when you melt the glaciers. But when you keep melting, the glaciers melt, then they go to the rivers. Then when they go far away from the glacier, that evaporates, goes back up into the air to the mountain, and then it snows and it replenishes the glacier, so the glacier doesn't disappear. But if you heat the earth, then the glacier melts faster, and air holds more water if it's warmer. So it does not snow as much on the mountain, so you lose the glacier. And right now, Glacier National Park in the United States is losing so many glaciers, they almost have to change its name. But the big problem is, think of the Himalayas. The Himalayas support 7 different rivers: the Yangtze River and Yellow River in China, the Ganges River in India. These water for the forests, for the farms, and for over 2 billion people in Asia. Over 2 billion people in Asia get the water from the glaciers of the Himalayas. So if we keep melting the Himalayan glaciers, then there won't be water for all the forests, all the people, all the farms. And without water, you die. So this is very serious, but is also the Sierra Nevada and the Rocky Mountains in the United States and the Andes in South America and the Alps in Europe, all of them losing their glaciers, losing the water for the rivers. All those people will have no water, and the animals and the forests will have no water. So another problem of global warming is it causes floods in some areas, but it causes droughts in other areas. And right now, the Western United States, I live in California, is undergoing a significant drought, a drought that is causing lasting, the scientists now have figured out it's going to last many decades unless we do something about climate change. So that means you can't grow food because you don't have the water, and people don't have enough clean drinking water to keep themselves alive. So the droughts are very serious in the United States and in other countries. And also the other areas like Pakistan is now having floods, which is also very serious. So that's another problem of climate change. And another kind of problem is when...
May I ask one question, Dave?
Yes.
You already explained about the climate change that's affect many communities, many places in the world, especially in Arakan state. We are talking about today. We have drought, we have flood, imbalance of the environmental. So my question to you, how we can protect our or preserve the Arakan Roma mountain? Would you mind a little bit explaining?
Okay, yeah. Well, the first thing let me answer the question two ways. First, the general way, we have to do general thing to protect everywhere, which is two things. We need to, two categories, but it's many things. One category is stopping the burning of coal and oil, any kind of fossil fuels, because can only protect Arakan State and everywhere else, Southeast Asia, but Amazon everywhere, by stopping or at least reducing the burning of fossil fuels. So the answer is we need to develop solar and wind and those kind of alternative fuels and not burn the fossil fuels. But this means also we need to redesign transportation system. We need to get out of cars, which means, for one thing, we need the electric car. But the electric car is only good if you switch to power it on solar plants instead of coal plants. And secondly, the car has to be reduced. We need to stop using the car and use the train and stop using the plane, because airplanes burn so much fossil fuel that we need to switch to trains because they move many people at once without burning the great amounts that planes burn. So we need to redesign transportation, and we need to make our energy systems efficient, and we need to conserve and burn less. And also we need to recycle everything so we don't cut the trees, and we need to preserve the forests so we preserve the climate. But specifically to Arakan, I think that in Arakan, there are people in the developed countries that have more money, and there needs to be aid from the richer countries to help the countries that don't have as much, because it's very hard to conserve when you need to eat. So there has to be good, honest aid to allow the people to be eating and living sustainably. But also for the Arakan, there needs to be local control of the forest. So for example, my World Rainforest Fund, we did a grant and we saved some forest in Africa, but the model was that we have the government of the Congo support and recognize the park and the preserve like it's national park, but the local people make the decision and control it. And it worked in the Congo. And I think we need to do that in Arakan State. So the Myanmar government needs to recognize the parks or preserves, whatever you want to call them, and the local people need to be educated and know that this is very important and be in control. But there are many models of that. Right now in India, the local people are educating about a certain small primate, looks like a monkey called the loris, and the people were killing it. They educate the people, this is good, we need it. And the people took control and they're saving it in Southeast India. So that kind of model needs to be applied to Arakan state.
Thank you, Dave. And also, people from Arakan, after Civil War, majority of people are planning on agricultural land, right? So my question to you, the expansion of agricultural land can be destructive to the forest. So would you mind a little bit explain about that?
Yes, I agree, because so especially the slash and burn agriculture is destructive to the forest, and if you clear too much land. So this is very important too, because people, they need to eat, but if they so they have to produce some food, but they have to do it sustainably, because if they clear too much forest, then the society collapses, just like the Mayan Indians in Central America expanded and cut too much forest to grow food. And then, as I explained, when you cut too many trees, you don't get rain and you can't grow any food. So it has to to my view, control population so there aren't too many people. And that means we need to empower women, because if you empower women, you can control the birth rate, but also you need to educate the people and educate them about the environment. And they need to learn the sustainable agriculture techniques. They need to know the value of the forest. Sometimes the forest can be used to bring in money through sustainable tourism if it's not overdone and the tourism doesn't, destroy the people's culture. But all this has to be done with sensitivity. But I think that there are two studies that were done, scientific studies, that showed that the best way to save the rainforest is to empower the indigenous people that live there, which means the Arakan people have to be empowered with money, with help, to save the rainforest and the land. And that's why the World Rainforest Fund, the group that I founded and which I'm president of, we always go by those two scientific studies that say you save rainforest by empowering the indigenous people. So we help by empowering the indigenous people. So I think that Arakan should set up a nonprofit that is dedicated to sustainable agriculture, which means, by the way, that means no pesticides, because you don't need pesticides. You can feed people without pesticides by scientific methods that control insects and fungus without pesticides and without too much fertilizer. But to have a group, a nonprofit NGO that's working, if there's not one already, to work on this and maybe work with the World Rainforest Fund. And also, if anybody wants to help the World Rainforest Fund, they can give us a donation by going to our website, which is where they can just type World Rainforest Fund, or they can type the website, which is worldrainforest.org. Do you have that to show, worldrainforest.org? Don't you have that to show them now? I can't hear you.
Yes, we are showing already. So another conversation I would like to highlight, Mr. David Seaborg, our nation, like we call the Arakan, right? That face grim reality of abuses, problems after the colonial contact over 200 years, right? By systemic and institutional racism.
Right.
So because of You are right. It's empowering local communities. Local communities do not have political and social economic rights to make a decision over their lands, over our land or property, even the forest, right? Or ocean.
Right.
So this is the root cause of the problem in our nation that, many threats we have, including the one of the biggest threat, the Peril offshore pipeline, right? It is contributing the scientifically and fossil fuel, right? Emission and forced labor and abuses, right? Many people from our state, we are the richest state in Burma. There's produce tons of oil and gas. Local communities do not have job. Many people, our communities, they are fleeing, looking for, migrated to another country, looking for a job, living in undocumented. They face lots of experiences on human rights abuses, undocumentation, all kind of violation they experiences. But this project is like a more, it's led to the forced relocation, forced labor and abuses I already mentioned, right? It's leading to poverty, hunger, right? And war, political instability. So this project has damaged our coastal ecosystem and polluted fishing area, destroying farmland, right? Traditionally, our peoples rely on the jungle, and we have collect food and then fishery, right? So my message to those companies who are investing or currently investing in Arakan need to respect the rights of our population and their survival, including the forest survival. Especially we are highlighting today's Arakan ROMA forest, right? Outsider, they came and cut our land without our consent and our permission. So that's why we need those project mechanisms that can apply in sustainable form, making sure that people sustainable solutions protect our traditional norms and knowledge and communities' consent and healthy ecosystem. So I would like to request, what is your advice? Is there any policy and enforcement? When we talked about the policy, enforcement is important. Barriers to, especially it comes to the environmental justice. So
yes, there is, because the thing is, it has to be remembered. Your point is a very important one. The first thing people need to realize that protection of the rainforest and protection of the environment is also human rights. Because if you destroy the rainforest, you destroy the people's livelihood as well as the animals and the plants. And also, always, again and again through my work, I see they always exploit the people when they go in and destroy the nature. They make them into slaves. They make there's prostitution and all kinds of things, torture, and killing of environmental leaders, murder and rape. It's disgusting. And so we need to make the connection between the human rights and the rights of the earth. And of course, if you destroy the earth, people don't have any water or food, and their culture is gone, and they can die. So there are models to protect. For example, in Brazil, they have in the Constitution that the indigenous people have land rights. So the first, you can look at models around the world and copy them, the already ones that work. So to put in the Constitution, of course, you need to fight for it, but to guarantee the rights of the people of the area to their land, to the forest. But even after Brazil won those rights in the Constitution, the people still, the exploiters come in and want to take the land anyway. But the way around that is the indigenous people demarcate their land. They mark the land, show where the land is, and then they can win. Every time they demarcate it, they win in court. And the courts are a good way also to go, because the courts in Brazil, they just stopped the gold miners from going in thousands, 20,000 into destroying the rainforest of the indigenous people's land. So, but you have to organize. The people have to get together and communicate, organize. In Borneo, the Borneo Project, we supported them to make, partly it was blockades to keep the bulldozers out, but partly to make videos, 3-minute videos, very good videos, show how destructive the dams were that destroy the rainforest and how corrupt the government was with the officials getting money in Borneo to build the dam, not to help the people and destroy the rainforest. And the videos educated so many people, and we stopped a lot of the dams. But also in Africa, we set up the reserves that were recognized by the government and the local people. So that means we need to have a fundraising drive. We need to have NGOs. The Arakan people need at least one NGO. We need activists. We need to get in front of any of the bulldozers, civil disobedience organizing, going to, I don't know, right now, military government. I'm not sure how you, if it's not democracy, it's more difficult, but still you need to pressure and you need to organize and fight for the land and the rights.
Thank you, Dave. And also I have one question. We have limited time. We have about 5 minutes. So I know that your father is a part of inspiring your life. Could you please talk a little bit about your father?
My father won a Nobel. Yeah. Pardon?
Our audience can learn from you about your father.
Thank you. My father is Glenn T. Seaborg. He was a chemist at University of California at Berkeley. He won a Nobel Prize because he discovered plutonium, a very important element, and also a total of 10 elements on the periodic table, including californium, named for California, and also Seaborgium, named after him. And he also redesigned the periodic table. He showed the periodic table was not right the way it was. And then he also served as chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, which is now the Department of Energy of the United States. And in that capacity, under President Kennedy, he helped get us the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which stopped the testing of nuclear weapons in the air and put it underground. And then later, under Bill Clinton, they got rid of nuclear testing even underground, so you don't test nuclear weapons. So he inspired my interest in science and encouraged me, and he paid for my undergraduate and graduate education. So I was very lucky to have him and my dear mother's support.
Thank you. So thanks for your time, Dave. I will be asking our audience in my language to partner with you if there is anyone is interested to partner and working through bring more public awareness about environmental issue and protection.
Wonderful. And I'll tell again, we are, if they want to go to the website, they can type World Rainforest Fund, or they can type worldrainforest.org. And then they can look at our website. They can either donate at the PayPal, or they can see our address and write us a check so that PayPal won't take some of the money. and we will work to save rainforest the way we are doing so successfully. We're the group that takes no money for me or any of the board of directors. We are very good at getting the money to the right place and efficiently. We don't spend money on administrative overhead. The money just goes to empowering the indigenous people to save rainforests. So we appreciate any help and support we can get.
Thank you, Mr. David Seaborg. Thank you. So we are closing. Talizava Muro, Chizu Miyagitamare, any season go, the Jaro Tabawa, Bay and Reti is up in Chile, it's Bay and Reti or Jaro, 2 Tonti was up in Caquila, Hole, up in Mira, Saipus Zaule, Tabi Tons of Shamare, Lolas Arakan Prima painting a Miyagi Sanigapare, Lutia Zipen. The Benzi Sepa, so we adjourn in a gunner towns of Shemare. Tabile, the cross season, Shilo Shila General and Sepame. She bang great honor praise along or 2 cheese of Yagitamare, along Bay Jama Bazi, Ben and Gamba, the made up pop to Tonki by Talizova.